If you get tired quickly during sex, have trouble maintaining firmness, or worry about finishing too soon, this is not uncommon. A lot of people deal with this, especially after 50, but almost no one tells you plainly where it really starts. This does not arrive all at once. One week, you may notice things feel a little weaker. A few weeks later, you find yourself having to try harder. Then there comes a point when you start avoiding it, not because desire is gone, but because you are no longer sure your body will respond at the right moment. Many people blame stress, lack of sleep, or they tell themselves, this is just what comes with age. I want to be clear, in most cases, that is a misunderstanding. The issue is not about willpower or mental strength. If you do not look at what is actually happening inside the body, you keep circling without knowing where things have gone off track. My name is Robert Ellison. I am a doctor. I have seen enough cases over the years to notice one clear pattern. Most people are looking in the wrong place from the very beginning. At first, I did not catch it either. But when the numbers keep adding up, you are forced to look again. There are a few very specific things inside the body that are directly tied to this, and those are exactly the parts that tend to get overlooked. Where does this actually come from? Then, first, one thing needs to be clear. This is not your fault, and it is not simply about age. Age does not create the problem. It just makes existing weak points show up more clearly. The first piece is blood flow. When circulation is no longer as smooth as it once was, the body responds more slowly. You do not always notice it right away, but when the signal is weaker, the response cannot be the same. Many people think trying harder will fix it. What is usually missing is the ability to deliver blood to the right place at the right time. The second piece is hormones. Over time, those levels change. They do not drop overnight. They shift little by little. That directly affects energy, sensitivity, and the ability to maintain a response. I meet many people who still have clear desire, but their body does not keep up with the rhythm they expect. That confusion often weighs heavier than disappointment. The third piece, and the one most often overlooked, is the nervous system and stress. Once you start wondering whether your body will cooperate, the nervous system moves into alert mode. That state makes everything harder from the start. I have seen many people blame themselves for this, when it is simply a very normal biological response. These three factors rarely show up on their own. They stack on top of each other, and when you look in the wrong place, you end up trying to fix the problem in ways that work less and less. That is why the right kind of support can make a real difference. And it is also why understanding this comes before moving forward. After a while, this does not stay only in the body. It starts to slip into the way you act. You begin avoiding moments that used to need no thought at all, not because you do not want them, but because you no longer trust your body to respond at the right time. That feeling is uncomfortable, and it arrives quietly. Then you act as if everything is fine. You smile. You talk the same way you always have. On the outside, nothing looks different, but inside, there is always a small question. Will this time be okay? You do not say that question out loud, but it is there. And once it shows up, the body starts to tense before anything even begins. What wears people down most is not a single setback. It is the waiting. Waiting to see if the body will cooperate, waiting to see if extra effort will be needed. The more you wait, the harder response becomes. I have seen many people get stuck in that loop without realizing it. And you do not talk about it, not because of loud embarrassment, but because you do not know how to say it the right way. You do not want to make it into a big issue, so you stay quiet. But silence stretches on, and confidence wears down, little by little. There is one thing I want to be clear about here. The way you react right now does not define who you are. It simply shows the body is under pressure in a very specific way. When that pressure is placed in the wrong spot, everything feels heavier. That is why there are more practical forms of support, ones that do not ask you to try harder. After a few disappointing experiences, many people quietly lower their expectations without realizing it. They try less often, they expect less, not because desire is gone, but because trust in the body is no longer what it used to be. And once expectations drop far enough, you begin living with that new normal. What I see repeat, though, is this: the foundation is still there. The body does not simply lose its ability because of a few setbacks. The problem is that it is not being supported in the right place, or it is being left on its own entirely. Some people keep doing the same things, waiting for a different outcome. Others stop trying altogether. Both end up stuck. I have seen situations where, once the right area gets proper support, response starts to change. Not a miracle, just the body finally having the conditions it needs to work the way it is meant to. But because very few people explain this clearly from the start, many come to the conclusion too early that it is all over. And this is the key point. Not every form of support works the same way. Choosing the wrong approach does not just fail to help, it reinforces the belief that you have hit your limit. That is the part we need to look at next. So when it comes to support, the first thing to drop is the idea that it has to be medication or something extreme. Approaches that push the body too fast usually feel good for a short while. Then things slide right back to where they were. And this is not about turning your whole life upside down in a few days. What I am talking about is much simpler. Things that are already part of daily life. Things most people see every day, sometimes right in front of them. They are just rarely thought about in the right way. Not a trick. Not a trend. Just basic things that matter more than people realize. When they are used properly, the real issue is how you approach it. Not more, not stronger, but the right thing at the right time and for the right reason. When those three come together, the body often responds more clearly than people expect. And to make sense of why these familiar things can matter this much, I need to slow down and go through them one at a time. When it comes to familiar foods, I often start with walnuts. Not because they are new, but because many people have eaten them for years without using them in the right way. Walnuts are closely tied to blood flow and nerve signaling. When circulation is uneven and signals move more slowly, the body's response becomes less consistent. Walnuts contain healthy fats and compounds that help blood vessels work more smoothly. They also support steadier communication in the nervous system. Now, put simply, when the pathways are clearer and the signals are stronger, response becomes easier. The way you use them does not need to be complicated. A small handful each day is enough. I usually suggest having them in the morning or early in the day when the body is more receptive. Chew them well. No need to salt them. No need to mix them with anything else. Keep it simple because the goal here is steady support, not a quick jolt. One thing many people overlook is this: do not pile them up and expect fast results. With things that work at a foundational level, consistency matters more than intensity. And once circulation and signaling are better supported, other factors finally have room to do their part. That is why the next seed plays a very different role. In many cases, I have seen pumpkin seeds help keep the hormone baseline more stable, even though most people barely pay attention to them. Not because they are rare, but because they are so familiar that they tend to be overlooked. Pumpkin seeds are closely connected to hormone balance and testosterone support. When hormone levels start to fluctuate, desire is often still there, but staying responsive becomes more inconsistent. That shift shows up in energy, sensitivity, and the sense of control. I have met many people who still feel clear desire, but notice the body responds more slowly and is harder to keep steady. That loss of rhythm is usually what makes things uncomfortable. The reason comes down to the natural fats and minerals found in pumpkin seeds. They help the body maintain a steadier hormone foundation over time, instead of constant ups and downs. The goal is not to create an immediate sensation. It is to give the body a stable base so it can do its job properly. The way to use them is simple. A small handful each day is enough. They can be eaten on their own, sprinkled on a salad, added to oats, or taken with a light meal. What matters is consistency, not piling them up. With things that work at a foundational level, a steady rhythm always works better than chasing fast results. And once the hormone base starts to settle, the body responds in a noticeably different way. That is why the next seed no longer works at the foundation, but moves directly into daytime energy and stamina. Once the hormone base feels more stable, the next thing many people notice is daytime energy. And this is where almonds tend to stand out. Not as a stimulant, but as something that helps carry a steady rhythm from morning through the afternoon. Almonds are closely tied to energy and endurance. When energy drops early in the day, everything that follows is affected. You tire more easily, breathing feels heavier, and by evening the body no longer feels ready. Almonds provide healthy fats, protein, and minerals that help energy stay even instead of spiking and crashing. I see this clearly in people who say they feel fine in the morning, then fade noticeably after midday. Not because they are doing too much, but because the body is no longer holding energy in a steady way. When almonds are added properly, many notice fewer dips and less need to push themselves through the day. The way to use them is simple. A small handful each day. Morning or midday tends to work best. When sustained energy matters most, eat them whole. Chew slowly. No salt, no sugar. Keeping them plain makes them easier for the body to handle. And once daytime energy is steadier, control becomes the next thing that starts to matter. That is where the next seed begins to play its role. There is one point many people only notice after their energy feels steadier, and that is control. Not always a lack of strength, but response arriving at the wrong time or being hard to hold when it matters. And at this point, flaxseed works in a very different way. Flaxseed is closely tied to signal stability and how the body coordinates its responses. When the nervous system and hormones are no longer in sync, things can feel inconsistent. Desire may still be there, but the body responds fast one moment, slow the next, or not at all. I see this clearly in people who say they have energy, but their sense of control no longer feels solid. The reason comes down to the soluble fiber and natural compounds in flaxseed. They help reduce swings, so responses are less up and down. Not to push things higher, but to help them stay where they need to be. For many, this is the missing piece that allows things to work more smoothly. The way to use it needs to stay simple, but precise. One small spoon of ground flaxseed each day is enough. Mix it into yogurt, oats, or a glass of warm water. No need for more. No need to rush. Use it consistently so the body can settle into the rhythm. And once control feels more reliable, that is when deeper fine-tuning starts to matter. That is where the next seed comes into play. Once control feels steadier, many people start noticing something else: endurance and recovery. Not just whether the body responds, but how long it can hold the state and how quickly it comes back. This is where chia seeds tend to show their value very clearly. Chia seeds are closely tied to endurance and the body's ability to recover. When recovery is weak, you may still respond, but fade part way through or drop off sooner than expected. I see this often in people who say things are improving, but they cannot maintain it, and the next time takes longer to reset. The reason has to do with how chia seeds provide fiber, omega-3 fats, and help the body retain fluid. These support longer-lasting energy and a smoother return after activity. not to push harder, but to avoid dropping too fast. For many people, this difference is noticeable. The way to use them does not need to be complicated. 1 spoon of chia seeds each day is enough. Soak them in water or plant milk for 10 to 15 minutes until they expand. They can be used in the morning or early afternoon. No need for more. Consistency matters more than a higher amount. And when endurance and recovery are finally in place, that is when the last piece comes in. The one that directly affects sensitivity and the overall sense of connection. Once endurance and recovery are in place, many people start noticing another factor shaping the whole experience: hormones and mental state. It is not just whether the body can respond, but whether the mind is calm enough not to interfere with that response. And at this point, sunflower seeds are often underestimated for what they actually do. Sunflower seeds are closely tied to how the body handles stress hormones and how consistent nerve signaling remains. When hormones are unsettled, the mind tightens, focus slips, and signals from the brain to the body lose their rhythm. I meet many people who have enough energy and stamina, yet things still do not unfold as expected. Not because strength is missing, but because the signal is uneven. The reason comes down to vitamin E, antioxidants, and the natural fats found in sunflower seeds. These help the nervous system run more smoothly, so the body is not pulled into tension too quickly. Not to create excitement, but to keep the mind steady enough for hormones to do their job. For many people, this alone noticeably changes how things feel. The way to use them is straightforward. A small handful each day works well, ideally around midday or early afternoon. Eat them plain, not coated in sugar, not overly salted. The goal is steady physiological support, not eating more and waiting for a strong sensation. And when both hormones and mental state settle into the right rhythm, it becomes clear how small things, placed correctly, can make a real difference. After some time, I began to notice the same pattern showing up again and again. People stopped avoiding situations that used to make them tense, not because everything suddenly became perfect, but because they no longer walked in expecting something to go wrong. Before that, they were often bracing themselves just to keep things on track. Later on, that effort was no longer needed. The body started holding its own state without being forced. Another clear change was that they stopped constantly checking themselves. They were no longer waiting to see if this time would work. Once that self-monitoring faded, responses started coming more naturally. Some people told me they felt less drained during the day. Their head felt clearer. And by evening, their body did not collapse into the same deep exhaustion as before. What is worth noting is that most of them did not see this as a dramatic turning point. They just noticed things felt steadier. Less thinking, less effort. And when you see that pattern repeat often enough, one thing becomes very clear. The issue was never a loss of ability. The issue was that the body had been compensating on its own for too long, without the right kind of support. After talking through each type of nut, there is one thing I always make a point of saying clearly. How you use them matters more than the nut itself. I have seen many people choose the right thing, then miss the results simply because the timing was off. What works at a foundational level does not respond like something you take today and feel tomorrow. The body needs consistency to recognize that this is part of a new baseline, not a short experiment. Skipping a few days, coming back for a few, then stopping again is the fastest way to keep everything stalled. Timing matters as well, not because there is some magical perfect hour, but because the body learns through routine. When you use something at the same time, in the same context each day, the nervous system starts treating it as a familiar signal. And when a signal feels familiar, the response comes more easily. The last point is this. Do not stop just because nothing feels obvious yet. Most of the changes I see do not arrive in a big moment. they arrive quietly. One day, you notice you are not thinking as much as you used to. And more often than not, that is when things have already started moving in the right direction. That brings us to a very common misunderstanding, and it is worth clearing up next. After being clear about why how you use each nut matters more than the nut itself, the next step is simply fitting them into daily life. Not a complicated plan, just giving the body enough time to stop reacting unpredictably. Morning is where the foundation gets set. When you first wake up, a small amount of pumpkin seeds or flax helps the body settle into a steadier state earlier. Then come almonds, not to stimulate, but to keep energy from dropping mid-morning. I often tell people this. Keep your usual short walk, then have your coffee like always. No need to give up coffee. Just do not let it come before movement. By midday, when the mind starts tiring before the body does, walnuts or sunflower seeds tend to work best. A small handful is enough. Lunch should stay light, so digestion does not pull too many resources away. Drink water steadily through the day. Do not wait until thirst hits. It sounds basic, but this is where many people slip. Evening is about shifting from holding things together to recovery. Chia seeds taken after a light dinner help keep the body from dropping too fast late in the day. No need to eat late. No need for large amounts. And one small change with a clear effect is turning screens off earlier than usual. Not because of discipline or rules, because the nervous system needs quiet to slow down. At night, there are no new tricks. Aim for 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And if possible, ease off alcohol during this period. Not a hard ban, just giving the body some time without extra work. I have seen many people move through this stretch without being able to name what changed. They just notice things feel less tangled, less thinking, less forcing, and that is often the clearest sign the body has started handling its job again. At this point, the question I hear most is what happens if a few days do not go as planned? That is what I want to clear up next. After you have settled into a steady rhythm with eating and rest, what matters next is not doing more, but not breaking that rhythm with habits that work against it. I want to be clear about this. Consistency almost always beats intensity. The body responds better to things that repeat each day, not short bursts of pushing hard followed by long recovery. A light walk every day often does more than irregular heavy workouts. Not because walking is better than the gym, but because it keeps circulation, breathing, and the nervous system working in a steady range. I have seen many people train aggressively, only to end up feeling worn down and out of sync. And there is one factor that cannot be ignored. Stress. Not the big, dramatic kind, but the low-level pressure that never really turns off. When the mind stays tightened, hormone balance tends to drift with it. Sometimes easing one meeting or letting go of one draining habit changes more than people expect. When these pieces come together, the body starts doing its work with less interference. And that is usually when people realize the most important question is no longer what to add. It is where to stop getting in the way. What most people are looking for here was never about going back to being 30. I have never seen anyone truly need that. What they want is a sense of steadiness, confidence, and feeling at home in their own body again. Not being at your peak all the time, not having every day be perfect, but waking up and knowing how your body is likely to respond, not guessing, not bracing yourself for an unexpected letdown. When things fall into the right rhythm, you stop thinking about it so much. You live your day, you move, you rest, and the body keeps up. That feeling is very different from trying to pull back something that is gone. It feels more like returning to a place that was always yours. I have seen enough people reach this point to know something for sure. This is not about age, and it is not about luck. It comes from setting the right foundation, keeping a steady rhythm, and stopping the habit of fighting your own body. If While listening, something here made you nod because it felt familiar. You can tap, like, not for me, just as a reminder to yourself that this is worth paying attention to. I'm also curious what stood out to you the most. You can leave a line in the comments. And if you feel like it, let me know where you are watching from. I do read those messages. If you want to keep hearing conversations like this, subscribing is enough. Nothing extra, just the things that actually matter. Age does not take this away. The body only stops responding when it is no longer supported the right way. And when that support comes back, the response does too.